everybody! We're back! What a successful first experiment here at Fantasy Labs.
I'm very glad that both of us, the biggest thing I was worried about was both of us coming back and only having like 2 features. So I'm glad we both like got through it.
I'll say, I usually take so much longer to put my stuff together. So that was a very interesting experience for me. I've got a little sushi I'm going to be chaunching. So I'm going to be chaunching this, but let's start looking at these domains that other people put together.
So the first one we're going to look at was by Cold Spark, who I know is still hanging out, and this is a nightmare domain. And as fate would have it, all 3 of the people that took the challenge with us here did different things. That also, when there was only 2 options, there was only 4 options, and we got 5. So shout out to you, Cold Spark, for coming up with a nightmare domain based on that prompt.
Well, I think that's like the vibe, right? You got to be inspired.
Oh yeah,
by whatever you got and make it your own.
Couldn't agree more. But let's take a look at it. So we have the domain spells, and then a first level feature here called Eyes of the Night. But the domain spells for the Nightmare domain: Sleep and Dissonant Whispers. Same vibe with you there on Dissonant Whispers.
I love that spell.
Sleep 100% works. Like, it's a nightmare. It is the most sleep related thing you could get, maybe. The next would be Darkness and Shadow Blade. Both of those work for me as well. Enemies Abound in Fear. Similar vibes with Fear. I haven't interacted with the Enemies Abound spell all that much. Do you know it particularly well, Jeremy?
I do. I do.
What exactly? It's like makes you think that there's bad guys around?
Yeah, it kind of does what Crown of Madness wishes it did, right? But seriously, it makes the enemies attack each other, right? Seeing them as foes.
That's very cool. The next one would be Phantasmal Killer and Confusion, or Shadow of Moil, you mentioned.
Hey, Shadow of Moil's mine. I'm just kidding.
Only Jeremy can use Shadow of Moil. No, I actually like Confusion, though. I actually think Confusion's a really good choice for this. And Dream, and a very obvious include there. It's nice when they just...
Static.
And Synaptic Static. Synaptic Static is a terrifying spell. That spell scares me. But also, if you're going in the more psychological nightmare direction, a spell that does psychic damage makes a lot of sense. But let's I like your spell choices. Let's take a look at the first level feature here, where we get into the deep of it. Eyes of Night. Your eyes are blessed, allowing you to see through the deepest gloom. You have dark vision with no maximum range. You can see in dim light as if it were bright light, and in darkness as if it were dim light. Your dark vision also allows you to see in magical darkness, such as the darkness spell, out to a distance of 120 feet. As an action, you can magically give the benefits of this feature to any number of creatures you can see within 10 feet of you. The shared benefit lasts for 10 minutes. You can extend this benefit a number of times, equal to your wisdom modifier at a minimum of once, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. The phrase extend this benefit, would that just be recast it, or does it mean that you can increase the length by another 10 minutes, but you only can use it during one chunk
of time? It sounds like... Yeah, it seems like extend, so you can make it... Oh, music's too loud again. Apologies.
It's just these tracks have a lot of different volumes from...
Yeah, they're weird and sounds. I think what that means is you can just continue the effect, right? You can keep it going.
But you can't stop it and then start it up again. Would that be the idea?
Yeah, there are a couple of features that have similar mechanics. I actually really like it. Very underutilized mechanic in 5e. I know the Enchantment Wizard, the Hypnotic Gaze, is a very similar kind of idea where you can just keep it going by using your action indefinitely. Or this one is just, you can just keep the dark vision going.
It's cool.
But I almost feel like, though, why would you ever want to stop it? Right?
Yeah, well, that would almost imply that, like, the answer wouldn't be 10 minutes, it would be have it go
10
for...
10 times wisdom modifier.
10 times your wisdom modifier.
That's actually a cleaner way of putting it, I think, the way you did it.
The way he did it?
Yeah, I think it makes, like, I think it's just more convention to say, like...
You can extend it?
Yeah, that makes more sense to me. Like, 10 times your wisdom modifier.
It's a little awkward.
But I like it. I like it written like this, so I dig it.
Anyway, yeah, it's a cool feature. Certainly makes sense. Let's look at the channel divinity.
Oh, I see. Coldberg was saying it should say give, so if you can use this feature a number of times, equal to wisdom modifier is really what he was going for.
Oh, okay.
The more kind of classic use. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I get that too. I think and I know this no maximum range, I think that came off, or I've seen that before in maybe one of the Merle's stream subclasses. I don't think you could ever, or maybe it was an Unearthed Arcana? I don't know. I don't think you could ever actually do that. That's so good. That's like, I'm sorry, as a dungeon master, that'd frustrate me. I don't know about you, Pete. Yep, Twilight UA. Yeah.
There are challenges that would negate. Like, for example, there's fun things that would kind of put a stopper in, which are things like you look down into a cavern and eventually it just becomes darkness because it's so deep. Be like, well, I can see forever, so how deep is it? Like, when does it change? That's like a little bit like when it moves beyond practicality and into just kind of like almost, kind of a fuck you territory, you get into a little bit of trouble. But
yeah, that's kind of how it feels. Like, fuck you, dungeon master. I can see forever.
There's like 120 feet is like practical. You're probably never going to have to encounter an area of darkness that's longer than that. That's also important to see in.
Mm-hmm.
But
I do like it. It's very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you could never do that, but it's just very good.
It'd be so hard.
Later,
because you have their barbarian that's like, yes, my eyes is the eagle barbarian. I can see for a mile in darkness. Thank you, cleric. Well,
painful dreams. Let's look at painful dreams. Do you want to take this one, Jeremy?
Yeah. Whenever you charm or causes fear to another creature, you may immediately use your channel divinity to deal 1d8 psychic damage to that creature. If damage would normally cause the effect to end or allow the creature to make another saving throw against, this damage ignores that clause. Interesting.
I really like the latter half of this. I feel like 1d8 psychic damage isn't like enough bang for my channel divinity buck.
But it is just extra damage, right? There's no action economy. It just is extra.
Maybe it scales then.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like still, even 1d8 of extra like I could just see more than that. Like,
yeah, maybe it's like half your cleric level or your cleric level.
That's more kind of the thing that I would be like, your cleric level damage. Just something that scales, I think, a little bit better into late game, because definitely late game, even if it's free damage that doesn't require any kind of save, I really like the idea of the.
You still want, you don't want to feel underwhelmed by the feature.
Yeah,
but it's very
especially
cool
on a channel divinity. But I really like if it would have that clause that ignores it thing for the damage ends it. I think that's just a cool catch, and also it's very flavorful. Like, it's there for practicality, but it lends to the flavor very nicely.
Yeah, I really love it, actually. I think that's a really nice addition.
I do,
I also like the name Painful Dreams. Very straightforward, very clear.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. 6th level, you get Can't Wake Up. Wake me up inside. I'm sorry. Starting at 6th level, the cleric's control over dreamscapes becomes more potent. Creatures have disadvantage on saving throws to resist the cleric's fear and charm effects.
Is that actually
interesting?
The thing is most of the high-level creatures are immune to them.
Yeah,
so I don't actually...
Not most, but some of them.
Yeah, okay, yeah. A good portion of high-level creatures already have, like, charm and fear immunity. So I actually don't know if it's that bad to give disadvantage on those specific things. The problem is it becomes problematic for me with things like Dominate Creature or Dominate Person or Dominate Monster, which are charm effects. Disadvantage on that feels a little steep, but there's a lot of, like, lower-level charm and fear spells that I actually think that it's kind of cool for.
But let's hold the phone for a second, right? It's not like this is unprecedented. There's a very small subset of spells, and the sorcerer, right, can heighten spell anything for 2 sorcery points, is it? for disadvantage.
Yeah, well, there would also be the question of what charm spells a cleric.
Yeah,
yes.
what Charm Cleric has.
I don't know if cleric has access to those spells that I was talking about.
Yeah, I got no idea.
I don't think they do. Now that I'm really thinking about it.
Yeah, dominate person. I don't think so.
No.
No, they don't. So it's really just the confusion. Gaius.
Oh no.
I think it's actually pronounced Gaius, but I think it's a sh sound at the end.
It's pronounced Gaius. Gaius.
Gaius.
I got the Gaius.
But actually, I like this. I think that's actually totally fine. It's at a 6th level. I think it's okay. I think it's okay.
I do too.
What do you think, Pete?
I might, like, when I first read it, I was like, disadvantage on saving throws.
Yeah,
no
gut
way.
instinct is, oh no.
But then the more I think about it, the more I'm okay with it. Especially if, like, the cleric don't get a lot of those really brutal ones. And if they want a multi-class to get those, then they earned it. Is kind of my thinking on that.
Well, I also want to say, right minds think alike. Ghostbark, both of us put a feature in here at around 6th level that affects the saving throws of enemies against your spells. Mine just prevents them from getting advantage. Yours gives them disadvantage on a smaller subset. I like that idea, the mental influence of that.
Flip note. Wake me up inside. Anyway, I'm actually, the more I think about can't wake up, wake me up inside, can't wake up. I'm down on it. I'm in. 8th level, potent spellcasting, done and done. 17th level feature, bringer of nightmares. Starting at 17th level, when you would normally roll 1 or more dice to deal psychic damage with a spell on your channel divinity, you instead use the highest possible number for each die. For example, instead of dealing 2d6 damage to a creature, you deal 12.
Wait, whoa.
Oh, God.
Oh.
That's very good.
Yeah, that's based off, I think, the life cleric's healing.
That would be, what's the synaptic static would be the one, right, to look at?
They don't get the new one. What is it called? Psychic Scream, right?
I hope not. So
Cleric.
synaptic static would be
They don't.
8d6. So synaptic static would deal 48 damage.
So my thought process on this boy right here, and I think this kind of, to a lesser degree, also affects the Can't Wake Up, is this is either, like right now we could look at all the spells in the game, right, and figure out which ones this affect. But this spell scales with new content.
That's a very good point.
And that's something that, like, you know, in the case of this disadvantage on charm or fear effects, I don't think that's really too much of a problem, just because of the nature of what charm and fear effects typically do. But
the right
this
psychic,
one just, yeah, like,
the right psychic
scared of
damage
this
spell.
one.
Yeah.
I'm scared of this one a little bit.
And I'm almost there with you.
Yeah.
Like, I like the idea of doing this. I just think you need to maybe find a way to ground it a little bit more, or, you know, tie it to a particular thing. And, like, I don't think you want to do something as specific as when you cast Synaptic Static, you deal maximum damage, because I don't know if that's that cool.
No. Well, one thing it might be, right, is, like, some funky ways I can just right off the bat. There are so many ways that you can amplify damage without just saying maximum, because I think that's the intent you're going for, and I think that concept is fine, saying you amplify psychic damage. Like, for example, like the sorcerer with their empowered spell. You could just rip the text on empowered spell and just say all your psychic damage does that, right? You can re-roll any number of dice or something. Or it could be your damage is like exploding dice, right? Like if you roll a 6, you roll an extra die and add it to the roll. There's a bunch of ways I think you could roll with this. It would be very, very cool.
Just a kind of a semi-related thing that's more sustainy, but just an idea that I just had was when you deal psychic damage with a spell, you regain a use of your channel divinity. So you can keep doing that other little psychic damage. It's a direction. It's a little bit different, but I think that could be cool too.
That would be very cool. I would want to, if you wanted to go in that direction, maybe you want to get Mind Spike in here somewhere. I don't know where you necessarily put it. Maybe instead of Darkness, even.
Yeah, we just got the Dissonant Whispers too. That's a good one for that.
Yeah.
As a bread and butter. Mind Spike's cool. There's not a ton of spells that deal. Oh, he's got Shadow Blade.
That's true. Right, Shadow Blade does psychic damage. Oh, I forget this.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's terrifying. Because you can crit with a Shadow Blade. Just my 8th level Shadow Blade crit dead.
Well, this is the Nightmare Domain. It's very cool.
That is a nightmare.
I'm digging the Nightmare Domain. I think this is another very solid,
cool.
Another very solid 1 hour homebrew.
Yeah,
nicely
shit,
put
guys.
together.
All right. And thank you so much, Coltberg, for sharing this.
Thanks for playing with us.
Holy crap, guys! It is so hard to do this and to put these together. Trust me, I just did it. It's crazy how good these are. Let's pop over to our next boy here. Our next one. This is the Hell Domain by Frosty Pirate.
Ooh, I like it. You got some nice bolds
Now,
here.
Frosty, I will say lowercase L on labs, and it's an experiment number 1. I'm gonna have to dock you a point for those. Just kidding, of course. Pete, you wanna hop us through? Wanna start us off here? You want me to kick us off?
I would love to start us off. Hell Domain. Oh, you did a flavor text. Nice. So far you're winning for flavor text because you finished it. Lord Asmodeus collects many servants among the mortals of the material realm. He grants the following abilities only to the most loyal of his followers. Straight and to the point. I like it. Hell Domain spells. You gain domain spells that Claire will list in the Hell Domain spells table. See the class feature. How they work. Standard. Burning Hands and Hellish Rebuke. Hellish Rebuke felt like it had to be in there because it has the word hell in it.
Yeah.
And I actually really like it when Dungeons & Dragons just gives you those ones for free.
Yeah.
Burning Hands and Hellish Rebuke. 3rd level, Dragon's Breath and Flame Blade. At 5th, Fear and Summon Lesser Demon.
Whoa!
Wait. Can Summon Lesser Demons summon a devil?
No.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Well, there's some. Let's not. I don't want to worry about the lore. I think the spirit is right. Summon Greater Demon and then Fire Shield, and then 9th Flame Strike and Infernal Calling. I can't remember what Infernal Calling does, but this is another one that Dungeons & Dragons gave you. Oh, great! Yeah, perfect.
That one is the devil.
Devil Sight. There it is. At 1st level, gain Dark Vision 60 feet, and Magical Darkness doesn't impede your Dark Vision. And then Hellfire. At 1st level, the spells you conjure are fueled by the dark flames of the 9 hells. Spells you cast ignore resistance to fire damage. I'm a little... That's very powerful, in my opinion, for level 1 right off the bat.
When does Death Cleric get it?
Since you get such potent options, in particularly in Hellish Rebuke.
I know Death Cleric gets that at what, 6th level?
Yeah, 1st feels like a touch early on that for me, but
yeah,
I also want to see it in the context of the other things that they get, because I see you did the double channel of divinity thing too. Yeah,
the concern here actually to me becomes multi-classing, but that's something to think about later in the design.
Yeah, that's a fair point as well.
Let's talk about these channel divinities.
That's definitely a good thing to get.
Servant of Asmodeus. Starting at 2nd level, you can use your channel divinity to summon one of Asmodeus' servants to assist you. Oh! As an action, you can summon an imp to the material plane to serve your will for 10 minutes, or until you lose concentration, so you're concentrating on a spell. The imp appears in an unoccupied space within 10 feet of you that you can see. The imp disappears when it drops to 0 hit points, or the channeling ends. Thinking concentration, but I get you. And the imp obeys your will to the best of its abilities.
I love that.
Interesting. I love that as well.
Yeah, that's great. I'm very excited. I actually don't even have, like, there might be some, if I wanted to analyze the phrasing closely, I'm sure there's some, like, summoning things that we could talk about, but I love that. I kind of want it to be not concentration.
I think it's kind of, the reason I think it's kind of gotta be concentration, right, is like, I don't know.
Does it have to be an imp?
My concern sort of becomes, right, like, the Chain Warlock, their whole thing is they're familiar with
imp.
right? Or I guess I can pick maybe a couple other little things, but
Yeah,
like
there's other options.
that's kind of the way I see it, right? I feel like it has to be a more fickle servitude, right? That's kind of how I see it here. Just having it for 10 minutes, it'd be like, all right, well, when I need an imp, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna have my imp.
There's
It's a little more of a gambit in combat here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I just see the problem for me is that I see the imp being kind of like not good in combat. So it just kind of seems to me like you wouldn't use it as combat because you'd want to concentrate.
Imps are good, my dude. It's second level.
At second level, I think at second level an imp is fine, but like it falls off pretty quick. They got their sting. It does poison. Like it's good when you get it, I guess.
I mean, it's good for, yeah, you're right. In combat, it's good when you get it, but it's even better out of combat.
Yeah,
obviously.
out of combat is when you'd be using it. But you just would never want to use this in combat, probably, because you would want to concentrate on, like, the millions of good concentration spells that clerics get, Spirit Guardians, so on and so forth.
You know what could be really cool? And Frosty, I'm just babbling at this point. If the number of minutes you could control it increased with your level, like if you're gonna get it for like a day once you get to level 10, right, or a week once you get to level 15, that could be really neat.
Are there any channel divinities that scale?
There aren't, to my knowledge, but you could always look at the spell Hex or Hunter's Mark, which lose concentration as they scale up. Fun fact about those spells. And that might be a cool way to give it that balance at low levels that the concentration kind of necessitates, but let you do fun, cool, I have a little servant I can send to do things when you get to higher levels.
Anyway, I really
That's
like
like
that.
My first thought.
You can tell that this feature is close when me and Jeremy are picking the nits on it so much, because it just means like this feature is like ready to publish almost. But yeah, I really
it's a
like
very
that
inspired feature.
Yeah, I'm really into Servative Asmodeus. Let's look at Aura of the Dread King.
Yeah, take it away, Pete.
6th level, you channel the terrifying presence of Asmodeus and strike fear into any creature who stands against you. Cool name, by the way. As an action, you create a 20-foot radius aura that lasts for 1 minute. Any creature hostile toward the cleric that starts its turn within the aura or enters it for the first time on a turn must make a wisdom saving throw against your spellcasting DC or be frightened. I am cool with it, but I feel like you need a save ends and then immune on that. It just needs a duration.
It's funky. It almost feels to me, right, like, yeah, I think it needs to save ends, but it almost feels like it should be like, man.
Because there's something very cool to me about, like, the big bad, like, the big bad, like, barbarian walking up to, or bandit leader walking up, and then getting to that 20-foot radius aura, and you just look at them and they just stop in their tracks and are like, oh, and don't want to, like, that's a cool vibe. But it can't be just frightened. It has to have some kind of way to end it.
Yeah, no, it definitely needs a way to end it. But even that, it's your spell save, it's a huge AoE fear. Like that's
very good.
A big AoE fear. I don't know, it's very funky. Good. It's funky. Yeah, it's very strong. It almost feels like from a balance perspective, as an action, each creature within 20 foot makes a save and becomes frightened on a failure. That without the ongoing aura aspect of it, feels like what it kind of should be. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
Just from a balance level.
This one needs a little bit more work, I think, but I love the flavor of this for sure.
I like the concept. I wonder if there's a way to tone it down.
You could execute this concept. It would just take some finagling.
But it's very neat. I dig it.
Agreed. Hell-fueled spellcasting.
Whoa! No!
8th.
Get this out of here. Where's my potent spellcasting?
Wisdom modifier damage that deal poison or fire damage. Awesome choice.
Oh wow, you've gone in the direction of just getting rid of potent spellcasting. Interesting choice.
Well, that's actually kind of standard for that's actually standard for the non-potent spellcasting ones. That your divine strikes do a damage type that's relevant to this. So,
well, to your
spells. This is spells, not cantrips.
Yeah. 'Cause, yeah. 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 Oh.
I'm not sure, actually. I take it back. I don't know if I'm in on. The cantrip thing seems so necessary, almost like you have to have it.
The purpose, right, of that 8th level feature, and regardless of its purpose, it's the idea that, like, if this were a class archetype, right, that didn't completely, like, there are so many clerics, right, and all of them have the exact same 8th level feature. I get where you're going here, but I'm not sure this is a strong enough motive for me to break that convention, right, of either potent spellcasting or divine strike.
Yeah, well, when I read it first, I'm kind of with you on that. When I read it first, I was just thinking that was cantrip. I just put cantrips in it in my mind.
Yeah, and Sword saying it's not too different from divine strike bonus damage, only it's applied to magic instead of melee. Well, exactly, Sword. The problem is, like, a fireball might hit, well, I guess, what's the best thing you can cast here? Well, like a circle of death, right? 60-foot radius AoE might hit 7 creatures. And so you're doing 7 times your wisdom modifier extra damage. You're doing 35 extra damage.
Well, it has to be poison or fire, but I'm with you on the.
Yeah. So
anyway, I'm with you. Yeah. It's definitely a questionable. I don't think you can do it that way. It's also just good to have that baseline, like. Yeah. Actually, you don't.
Not sure about it. It's like the final take here.
But let's look at Paragon of Hell, 17th level feature. You gain immunity to fire. I'm sorry, starting at 17th level, you gain a powerful blessing from Lord Asmodeus himself. Forget to read the flavor text. You gain immunity to fire and poison damage, and your weapon attacks leave infernal wounds. And then you've named infernal wounds here, which is when you hit a creature other than an undead or construct, they must make a Constitution saving throw against your spellcasting DC or lose an additional 3d6 hit points at the start of each of its turns. A creature can only be afflicted by 1 infernal wound. So it has this this bleed effect on it.
It looks like you ripped this off the Horn Devil, right? I know I've seen things like this on the, what is it called? The Nikoloth has a similar feature.
Again, just you need to make sure, for one thing, there's a way to end it. Because you don't want it to be, if you fire an arrow at a guy and run away, they bleed out to death. The thing I'm not crazy about on this is the amount of upkeep you would have to do to keep tracking all of these bleed effects, because presumably, as the Paragon of Hell, you are trying to put the infernal wounds on as many creatures as you can, and then you're just going to have a bunch of things that you have to remember to roll 3d6 on at the start of all of their turns, and that just sounds kind of like just an annoying bit of a management to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a potential issue. For me, I mean, that's a playability. We could, finagle that kind of issue. The thing that, like, kind of gets me about it a little bit is this class very much, at least from the rest of the construction of it, seems like it's a spell casting, like, kind of ranged, I don't want creatures to get near of me, so I scare them away with my aura. I have spell casting at 8th level. It's kind of strange that you then give it a melee-oriented feature at the 17th. I get where it's going, but it feels like almost a different kind, like...
Yeah.
It almost feels like that'd be the final feature of, like, a Hell Knight, right? Kind of class.
That, to me, seems like... Yeah, for sure. I think you could easily make something like this work. And instead of the Hell-fueled spellcasting, do Divine Strikes that deal poison or fire damage. And then do... At first level, give, like, a heavy armor proficiency. Maybe instead of, like, the Hellfire thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of choices. A quick
shift. Like, it would be very easy to shift this in the more melee-minded direction. And that actually feels very hellish to me, like, the more martial thing, because, they are very militant.
At least in 5e.
Yes.
But yeah, I dig it. I think there are a lot of very cool concepts here, but as most things that are made in an hour...
made in 1 hour. Anyone who's tuned in after the start, everything that we're reviewing right now, we did a couple earlier. At the start of the stream, we did a challenge where Jeremy and I and a few members of a few people hanging out in chat here all tried to homebrew subclasses in 1 hour, giving concepts that me and Jeremy kind of provided here. And
these concepts they only learned about at the very beginning of the hour too. So that's a huge.
Yeah, didn't have any time to think going in.
Yeah, so very cool. I dig it, Frosty. I think this is definitely a really good start to what is a very cool subclass.
I'm really feeling Servant of Asmodeus. That it really hit me personally as a player. Very much want to use that feature. But let's move on to our final one of these that we're going to look at tonight, which was the Sea Strider Ranger. Which I'm very glad that Flip, that you made the Sea Strider Ranger. I was really excited about that concept.
I wanted to do it so bad.
And I think, well, I'm excited to see what you put together on the Sea Strider.
Yeah, let's dive. Pun intended. As a hunter of sea creatures, you feel at home near bodies of water and ships. Navigation and sailing aren't hard for you at all. The position of the stars are easy to read. A ship is your home. In fact, let's hunt down the horrors of the deep. All right.
I like the flavor.
As a Sea Strider, you automatically have proficiency with water vehicles as you feel most comfortable at home on the sea. Cool.
Water vehicle proficiency works?
The first level feature, it looks like. All right.
Yeah. And then, you would get, it's the third level subclass, so you'd get it at third level, presumably, when you take this subclass. So you'd probably want to write in there somewhere like, when you take this subclass at third level, you get Fisher, or maybe include it in this third level feature here, Natural Swimmer, which is at third level. As a hunter of sea creatures, you spend a lot of time in the water, and thus you don't need to make a roll for any checks that focus mainly on swimming. You have advantage against anyone in water that isn't a sea creature, as you can outswim them. Against sea creatures, you get a single bonus action to use a basic attack on the creature. Okay, I see what you're going for here. You're doing one thing that I think would help this a lot is you want to probably give them a swim speed, because that's the direction you're kind of going here. Which inherently, the underwater combat mechanics in 5th edition are really kind of wonky in a lot of ways. They're not that great. But basically, a lot of the things that you wrote here, you're actually going to kind of get if you have a swim speed.
Yeah, and I see Flipnote and saying in chat, I took a lot of thinking and it isn't the best. Well, here's the thing. In an hour, all you really want to get, honestly, for me, when I'm making a subclass, if I'm taking an hour, I'm probably writing the flavor at the beginning, and I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall as to what I think could be cool for its other features. Sometimes I'm not even getting there. Sometimes it's just the concept. So the fact that you have an idea of what that you want it to do, right? Water vehicles and good at swimming immediately right off the bat, that makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah,
like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that works. I wouldn't worry too much. But
100% agreed.
One thing I think you were kind of going for here is advantage against anyone who isn't a sea creature and can outswim them. So what might be cool here is you have advantage on attack rolls against creatures without swim speeds while swimming.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of what you were going for.
I think that would be the best way to. Well, my question, Jeremy, is: do creatures in the water have disadvantage on attacks if they don't have a swim speed? I'm trying to remember the rules.
Depending on the weapon they're using, yes.
Well, unless they're using a trident. But if you have a swim speed, you can use a flip sword in the water.
You betcha.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure that I was correct about this. So some of that will come with, just say you have a swim speed, if you want to say equal to your walking speed, like Cold Spark said, or you could just pick a number. You could say you just have a swim speed of 30 feet, which would be probably the standard choice to make.
Great name for the feature, Natural Swimmer. Perfect,
it works.
Nice and straightforward, and good for a ranger, right? That
specifically a ranger. Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Because you want it to have that kind of almost mundane, they're just good at swimming. Anyway, let's look at the next feature here. Horrors of the Deep.
Horrors of the Deep. You want to read it, Peter, or should I?
Why don't you take this one?
You know a lot about the horrors of the deep and gain the ability to call upon those horrors against others. Oh, God. Upon using this feature, you get a type of eldritch energy from some ancient underwater entity, and your weapon gains an aura. You get to add 1d6 force damage and 1d4 necrotic damage to your attack rolls by using a first level spell slot. At high level spell slot, you add 1 die to both types. Okay, so the idea you're going for here is kind of giving them a divine smite-like feature, except it's like a deep one's smite. I dig it. However, I would note typically rangers get a feature at 3rd level, and then they'll get another subclass feature at 7th level. They usually don't get one at 5th. So that might be something to consider at 7th level instead of at 5th. I get the idea though. I think, what was it?
Is it the Gloomstalker get it?
No, it was the Fey Ranger they made. The Fey Ranger. What was the Fey one? The Fey Ranger got a very similar feature. Flip note: the Fey Ranger was an Unearthed Arcana, so you might not even know it exists. But I'll tell you, you were on the exact same thought process that Wizards was on when they were making that Ranger.
Absolutely. Another thing, just for kind of cleanliness, and this is just a good kind of rule of thumb for a lot of homebrew design in general. I see you did 1d6 force and 1d4 necrotic. I would recommend it being 2 dice that are the same number and the same damage, just for ease. Just because a lot of the times there's a lot of nitty gritty, unless there's a particular reason you want the flavor of both force and necrotic on this. It's just a lot easier to kind of remember what it does for players when it has just a consistent thing that you can just it's 2d6 force. Or even cold is another thing that would work great for something like deep underwater. I know is a common way they represent that.
Yeah, and I think the thing you were looking at for the Beastmaster, I don't know what they would get at 5th level. I don't see anything there. I don't know. Yeah, Beastmaster is really funky. I wouldn't look at the Beastmaster as your example when you're looking at a Ranger. I'd look more at the Hunter or one of the other Rangers, like the Monster Slayer. Just because Beastmaster is a little bit of a weird one. But yeah, let's talk about Mermaid Soak. I love the
name Mermaid Soak. Yeah. Experience with the Ranger, allow him to hold his breath underwater for half an hour if not in combat. If in combat, the Ranger can hold his breath for half of that time. For starters, I really like that you didn't give them the ability to breathe underwater and just gave them a really long hold breath. I think that's really flavorful, specifically for a Ranger. They're just good at holding their breath. That's really cool for me. And then the second half of this is another bonus of this feature is that any charisma-based skills get +2 to all rolls and DC checks. This one, I don't know if that half of the feature makes as much sense to me. In the context of a Ranger, I get the mermaid connection, that mermaids have this inherent kind of charm about them that brings people in. But I don't know if I'd represent it in this particular way on a Ranger. Especially flat bonuses, like the +2 here, are commonly, I would say that that's kind of not commonly the best way you want to go out if you want to give them charisma in some way.
Yeah, I get what you're going for here. I'm a little torn.
It's just this one doesn't fully connect. This one doesn't fully connect with me on. I get the connection to the mermaid, but it doesn't necessarily go in with the rest of the vibe, which is kind of this this underwater hunter. Maybe I could see the kind of thing you gain advantage on charisma checks made to interact with undersea creatures, because you're going to interact with mermaids and you're going to interact with merfolk, and so I could see something that's you're really the friendly creatures of the sea, you can be good at being friends with those creatures, because that actually feels kind of in flavor to me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you could say, a really easy way to do that is any creature with a swim speed. You gain advantage on it, on ability checks made to interact with creatures with a swim speed. Yeah,
that's actually a great way of saying that. Very succinct, Jeremy.
Yeah. But again, I also want to just clap to the hold breath. Very cool. Very in flavor.
Yeah, I love that hold breath move.
I
particularly like it.
5e doesn't really typically worry about that kind of stuff, but
Yeah, and half an hour I think is enough of a restriction as it is.
Yeah.
But like I particularly liked it because I know that if I made this ranger, I would have just let them breathe underwater, and it's so much cooler to let them hold their breath.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Also, I don't think it's a problem for. I mean, the Horrors of the Deep, there's a bit of a balance issue with that much kind of damage, I think, maybe. But
yeah, I think we could talk balance on that.
But I think if that were at 7th level, even if you kept both of these also at 7th level, I think that's okay. Or hell, maybe you could move this holding breath up to natural swimmer and give it to him even earlier.
Yeah, I'm down on that for sure.
Yeah, I think that would be a really cool way to take it. Mark was asking.
I know the name Natural Swimmer is really great, but I could even imagine a feature called like A Life at Sea, where they also get the water vehicle. Well, I was gonna say where they also get the water vehicle proficiency in that same feature. Unless you want to also like create a new thing for the water vehicles and give that a title as well.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I would keep the Horrors of the Deep and Mermaid Soul separate. Like they'd be separate features, because obviously you're not going to put also under Mermaid Soul you get to do this Eldritch stuff. But
yeah, you'd want to
get both of them at 7th level. Let's move to 11th level, Pete. You want to take Influence of the Moon?
Yeah, absolutely. The moon has major influence over bodies of water. You can feel this influence acutely. From half moon to full moon to half moon at night, you gain 1d8 to all weapon attacks, or you can use this influence to give yourself advantage on ability or attack rolls. This ability can be used 10 times before a long rest is required to use it again. So this is during, I get the vibe that you're going for, during a particularly bright moon, you gain extra damage and extra abilities. The problem I have with this, I think you can do some cool stuff with the idea of having like a tidal influence, but what as a ranger, if I pick this, I wouldn't be into a feature as a player that I only get half the time. What I would want is you get maybe one thing during the full moon phase, and then you get another thing during the other half of the phase, if you really wanted to go that direction and you wanted to tie to something. It's also just in general a little risky. It's a very like kind of hit or miss thing to put a design in it that's very much out of the player's hands. But
even kind of beyond that, right? You already gave a big damaging feature and the Horrors of the Deep. I don't think you even need the extra damage and attack rolls here. What you could do, or what I think of, because Influence of the Moon, right, the ebb and flow of the tide, this feels almost like a movement ability to me. Like almost like it could be a movement ability.
Yeah.
I could even just say, right, like at night you gain these benefits, right? Or under the light of the moon you gain these benefits.
At
while
night,
in moonlight, right?
Yeah.
I think there are a couple of ways you could play this while still having the like it's only available sometimes, but giving it some fun play to it.
At night is definitely I think a better take on that, because I could get into like it's also a lot easier to track for DM, because not necessarily every DM knows the phases of the moons at any given time in a game. So that and then it might be like they arbitrarily decide it's like a new moon, and then your campaign just goes day by day. So it's like 15 sessions before you can use it. You know, there's a lot of ways you could get kind of screwed over, but night is more reliable for sure.
Yeah, and I think it can definitely it can be a little funky to have those very situational features, especially as like the 11th, like because you got a feature at 7th level, and then you got to wait 4 levels before you get a new feature, right? And then another 4 levels before another new feature.
I am.
Yeah, it's just a bit funky.
And last but not least, here we have Master of the Sea. As a sea strider, you have become Master of the Sea. Smaller sea critters won't bother you, and will even offer help to you if there's a larger danger they want gone from that area of water. You gain 2d10 damage against all aquatic creatures, and will never get lost as long as stars are visible or you have a compass of some type. Also, you have the ability to make rope, as long as you have any type of material that works for rope. You can even make boats if you have nearby materials and the time to do so.
Interesting.
I like the idea of making a rope. Well, you can build a boat, but I really like the idea of in your downtime, you're always just like knitting together rope. I almost want them to get that at level 1 along with the ship, the water vehicle proficiency.
You might be wondering how I got off that island. I took my rope and I lassoed a turtle. Where did you get the rope? The hair from my back. Captain Jack Sparrow right there.
That's Captain Jack Sparrow for sure. So one thing here is
I like that so much.
I do too. I really like that rope creation feature. So one thing I would say is like smaller sea critters won't bother you and will even offer to help you if there's a larger danger they want gone from that area of water. That is really cool flavor, but it's tough to put things like that in features where there isn't a clear idea of what it means for the player and the DM, because you usually want these things to be really clear cut for player related content. Like as an example of something that you could do that would have that same effect would be like you can cast a conjure animal spirits, conjure woodland beings?
Yeah. Or even like a beast bond like effect or something like that.
Yeah.
Natural sea creatures when X feet of you are charmed by you.
You can cast like the animal friendship spell at will, targeting a creature with a swim speed. There's a lot of things you could do to create that effect while having it be codified in real game mechanics.
Yeah, having the rules to back it up.
Yep. And then for the 2d10, and I think this is like going to be just an overarching design advice on this one, is I notice a lot of, I think 3 of the features here directly impact giving extra damage to your weapon attacks. You probably don't want to keep hitting the same area like that, because that's how you start to get a little bit too much power on something, is when it keeps doing the same thing on top of itself like that. And I'd be more interested in this last feature rather than just doing more damage. I would be more interested in seeing something of the direction like, maybe if you're doing in friendly with sea creatures, like you can conjure a whale or something like that by making a call out in the ocean, or just some kind of different thing, whatever it is that kind of suits you and what inspires you.
Yeah, I think a really interesting example of this, right, is if you went and looked at the Circle of Land Druid, its capstone Nature Sanctuary has a cool thing where when a plant or beast would attack you, it has to roll a thing or it can't attack you. And I think you could kind of put that idea with sea creatures in this to kind of reflect that creatures of the sea just don't want to hurt you. It's not even that, even if they're your enemies, they still don't want to hurt you. Right.
That would be a very cool example of the kind of thing that you could do. Another thing,
and you could just take the text right off of the Nature Sanctuary feature and just change it a little bit to more appropriately fit what you're going for.
And another thing that would be very cool, I see you have here the never get lost as long as stars are visible or you have a compass. This thing seems like it could benefit very much from Master of the Sea. As a Sea Strider, you gain these features, and then to do a list of here are what the mechanics that you get out of that are with bullets would be a cool way to I think format this last feature, and to kind of bind it logically.
Absolutely. But overall, very cool. I like how you ended up going here.
I really like that you went a much more, and this is really what I was actually hoping would be done with this, which is you went in a much more mundane feature with the making the rope, and it's not you conjure you don't conjure big waves. You're just very much a person accustomed to life at sea. You're a sailor at heart, and I love that.
You're a ranger.
you're a ranger. Well, I feel there is a tendency to even with wizards,
rangers are magic in 5e.
Yeah, wizard rangers, even wizards of the Coast Rangers go in that direction sometimes. But I like this as well. And again, this is also another 1 hour homebrew. And as we're wrapping up here, this was our last one. Man, you guys absolutely crushed it. I like to think that me and Jeremy did very well as well. But just pat ourselves on the back for a moment.
Great work, everybody. Very
yeah.
successful experiment one.
For sure. I had a lot of fun doing this, and I hope that you guys did as well. That's gonna bring us to the end of our this first segment. What's it called?
The lab experiments.
Lab experiments was what that was called. Yeah, I really hope that you guys have fun. Sir should do it again sometime. I think we definitely will. This probably won't be an every week thing.
Maybe, who knows?
But maybe, yeah, in the long run, if people decide that they really like this and they want to do this every week, then we'll move.
Yeah, and thank you all so much, both for chatting in the chat and hanging out, but also for playing along with us and making stuff. It's awesome. You can get so much inspiration just from seeing what everyone else is doing. I hope that what Pete and I made inspired you guys to hopefully make some of your own cool stuff. And I know your cool stuff has super inspired me to want to make all the same stuff too, because it's so cool.
Yeah, I want to go through and polish literally everything here tonight and finish it.
Yeah, it's awesome. So thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for playing along. Cold Spark, I think a once a month thing. I have ideas about the next lab experiment. Yeah, send those my way. If you guys again liked, or if you didn't like it too, let me know this. Private message me, at me in the workshop channel, at me anywhere. Be like, Pete, this is what I think of lab experiments, and here's how it should be done moving forward. Because it's an experiment. We're figuring out what it is.
Absolutely.